You're listening to Journey to Truth podcast.
Once you recording?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh God, I'm nervous. No.
Why?
All right. Well, yeah.
We've done
Welcome
this
to
6 times. Why?
Why are you interrupting me? Is the question.
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna keep interrupting you. Is that cool?
Welcome to Journey to Truth podcast. I'm Tyler Koala with Aaron Kuhn, and tonight we have Justin Deschamps. How's it going, Justin?
Good. Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks for
great
joining us.
having you. So I guess we'll just. I kind of want to touch on everything. We'll just kind of see where the conversation takes us. But tell us about everything. Q, ETs, your own personal work, what's happening, in the community right now. Just go ahead and fire away.
Right on. Well, I run the Stillness in the Storm website. It's like a news media website. I post a lot of news-related items. I also post a lot of just information I'm searching for. So what my mission is, to put it in a nutshell, is to try to help teach people how to become better truth seekers. Because ultimately, through the truth, everything else that you could think of, whether it's trying to free yourself from the cabal or make yourself healthy or advance in your spirituality or have better relationship with your partner or your family or whatever, all that falls under the truth umbrella. So a few years ago when I woke up in 2010, I asked myself a question. I said, what is the biggest thing that I could lay claim to that would help as many people as humanly possible, that would encompass all these different aspects of various things we were finding in the truth community? And the three things I made contact with were philosophy, law, and psychology. And I know those sound kind of dry and dusty, but they're really like the big grand things, because as far as philosophy is concerned, that's basically how you use your own consciousness to make sense of reality. So, and psychology is like the mechanics of your beingness. And then law is the fundamental rules that make up existence itself. So if you think about life like a video game, the way that the video game is set up, that's where the law comes in, like all the things you can and can't do. Your psychology is like, well, how is the character set up? What skills does it have? And then psychology or philosophy is you actually using all of that in real time to do things. So when I made contact with those three big branches, I started to realize, yeah, actually everything does relate to itself. And if I can speak to these three subjects really clearly, then I can give people tools not only to discern whether or not the information they're understanding is true and accurate, but then how to use it in their lives and how to not be dogmatic with it. So one of the things I really try to emphasize is discernment, because in my time in the awakening community, which I've been involved since publicly since 2013, I've noticed there's a lot of people holding what I call flags of truth. This is my truth, you have to believe it. Maybe there's another person who's got another truth that doesn't really jive the same, but they want you to believe it. And I realized that there was a lot of people a lot of great information, but not a lot of like deep, rich understanding. Because ultimately, from a philosophic standpoint, from like what's called ontology, or the study of beingness, the truth is one. There's only one truth. But we all have different perspectives on that truth, which means that if we can work and figure out how to weave our perspectives together, then we can unite as a people to not only make our lives better, but free ourselves from this tyrannical control system that we have. So that's kind of like the big picture perspective that I have on my work. So as a way to do that, what I do is I find all sorts of different pieces of information and I present it as food for thought for people, asking them to think about it, contemplate it. And then when I have time, I'll actually do like a deep dive analysis of a body of material. I'll describe some type of concept or principle, some type of really important tool or useful ability and really get into it. And right now there's a whole bunch of different things I'm researching. I'm researching male and female dynamics and how the cabal use divide and conquer tactics to separate men and women and destroy the human family and consciousness itself. I'm also researching what I'm calling kind of like the spiritual mechanism or blueprint that allows the creator's essence and plan to actually flesh itself out inside the creation through psychology and how that works in your actual body, which is really fascinating, because once you understand the kind of spiritual psychology, what I call spiritual psychology, all of your other human motivations start to make sense. And one of the control mechanisms the cabal uses against us is to make it so that we don't know who we are. We don't know our own nature. We don't know where we come from. We don't know what the universe is. And because of that, we don't really know our identity. I mean, if you don't know what your identity is, if you don't know where you're coming from, what you want to do, who you are, and where you're going, it's very easy for you to be manipulated and led astray. And we're basically living in a world where humanity has forgotten itself. And because of that, we're all kind of blindly walking off a cliff together in a collective sense, not everybody individually, but in a collective sense. So,
well, yeah, I'm sorry.
okay.
That's exactly what part of this awakening is really remembering who we are and remembering what we already know. It's just buried deep inside of us. And I like what you said earlier about I guess the cabal trying to divide the men and women, but it's not just men and women. As far as relationships, I think it's also families. It's separating families right now. There's a lot of controversy. People. I know someone who argues with her mom just over this whole deep state thing. And it's just people are growing apart. There's definitely a divide and conquer agenda happening.
Oh yeah, totally. And I would say the core wound is, the wound between parent and child. That's probably the first one, one of the biggest ones. And then from there, you have the wound between individuals and other individuals, and then obviously male and female. Like once you get old enough, the divide between men and women at a romantic level, at a pair bonding level. And from you got to realize that the deep state or the cabal, these guys are ancient psychologists. These guys have been studying human nature for all of human history. And arguably they inherited a whole lot of information from extraterrestrials or extra-dimensional beings and things like this. So these guys know you better than you know yourself. And if you think you can live a happy, productive life without gaining self-knowledge, you're dreaming. I'm sorry. You got to know what you're doing. You have to know how your body works. You have to understand how your consciousness works. And when you do that, it can be a little intimidating, because at first, the things that we're sold from society is we want to live like a kind of hedonistic lifestyle where it's all about pleasure and fun. And, we don't have to worry about our problems. We can just mask over them. You can just take a pill. You can go see a movie. You can drink a beer, whatever it is, the thing that's going to make you escape from your problems. But in reality, in your efforts to escape from one slaughterhouse, you're moving right into another one without even being aware of it.
Yeah, it's like fixing the drug problem with a pill.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. Yeah. Problem, reaction, solution. So.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, how long ago did you start up Stillness in the Storm?
Great. As a matter of fact, we're in the 6-year anniversary. We just turned 6 years in March. So yeah, we're 6 years old at this point.
That's awesome, because I was on there checking out. So you have the official page, and then you have, I guess, the separate group
on Facebook. Yep.
Yeah, and so you have like over 51,000 people that have liked the page, and then over 20,000 members in the group. That's incredible. Congratulations on that, man. I don't know how you started or what came about, but I don't know if you ever even anticipated on it getting as big as it is, but that's awesome. Good for you, man.
Yeah, I wasn't actually. And when we started Stillness, me and the co-founder, Julian, originally it was just a podcast. We were researching all this stuff. We had started our awakening in 2010. We discovered cures for cancer and the UFO cover-up and various other things, a whole bunch of things, and law. And we really wanted to just add our voice to the choir of people who were researching information, and just kind of took a life on its own. And we weren't really anticipating it. But once we had the interest, we felt it was our duty to do something good with it. And that's what I've been trying to do since then.
Yeah, that's awesome. That so you actually started off as a podcast, you said?
Yeah. It was on Blog Talk Radio back in the good old days.
Nice.
And yeah. So that was fun. It was like a discussion, so very similar to the podcast you guys have. We'd pick some topics, just have a conversation about them, all sorts of interesting things. And then in 2013, we started the actual website to start to just post information we were finding, and then that kind of took off on its own. I had a few posts that went viral, and that just got a life of its own. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. That gives me hope. Hopefully we can. I mean, I already see this going in a positive direction, but it's just really cool to hear other people's stories of how they got to where they are.
Yeah, and I remember you saying kind of the thing that triggered your awakening, or that started you on that journey, was you were researching the Gerson therapy for curing cancer, and you came across that, and you're like, wait, like this is ridiculous. Like, or like, if there was a cure for cancer, I would know about it. Like, I'm a smart guy. And then you just wanted to check it out, and then you kind of found out it was legit, and you're like, well, what else is out there that I don't know about? That you kind of just went from there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I call my grand awakening moment, or in psychology, philosophy, be the crisis of belief. So the reason people wake up at all is because the maps of knowledge or the beliefs that they're using to organize their reality break down at some level.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that breakdown happens, the way your psychology works is you go into kind of a crisis mode, and it usually feels really intense. You get a lot of anxiety. It can cause sometimes paranoia or anxiety attacks. And what's happening is you're going to like a hyper state of awareness, because your brain or your consciousness, which is itself guided by a spiritual being or plan, is looking to get more information. So, from a kind of a grand perspective, from what is the spirit's trying to do to the flesh or to the body and the mind to allow evolution to take place. We have a whole body designed to be receptive to information, and we evolve through information. We evolve through exploring ideas spiritually. So when you have a belief system, and this is one of the things that Cabal really tries to do, they want to get you to believe things, but they don't want you to understand why you believe them.
Exactly.
And once you do that, you identify with it. It becomes a part of your identity. And now some other belief comes in that counters that. Your natural reaction, your animalistic reaction, is to be like, no, that can't be true.
It's a threat.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I was actually watching. I don't even remember what it was, but it was a psychological test. It was a waiting room full of people, and everybody was in on the test except for the one girl. So they were sitting in the waiting room, and there would be a beep, just a noise, a beep go off in the room, and everyone in the room would stand up, and then they would sit back down, and then it would beep again, it would stand up. Well, the one girl, she wasn't in on it, so everyone stood up, and she didn't know what was going on. She looked around, and okay, they got up again, okay, and then the third time,
I remember seeing that.
and the third time it went off, she stood up with them, and then she started standing up with them.
Doing it.
She had no idea what she was doing or why she was standing up, but she just did it because everyone else was doing it. And it's the simplest test, but just enlarge that into the masses. I mean, and look what kind of control you can have on the people.
Exactly. Yep. Precisely. So yeah, I mean, one of the things they do is, particularly from an early psychology perspective, is they destroy the mother-child bond. And once that's really important. You got to think about birth in terms of prenatal. So you spend 9 months in the womb, But then you have a postnatal period that's almost equivalent. So it's 9 months in the womb and then 9 months out. And that 9 months you're out of the womb, you and your mother should basically be like one. So she's literally like carrying you around inside of her. And then when you're out of the womb, now she should be carrying you around outside of her, but literally on her all the time, as much as humanly possible. And what that does is it allows you to build the tools in your own psychology to actually deal with the unknown, so that you can explore reality and then build your own personality structure that makes you a strong, confident, free-thinking person. Well, the way we raise our kids, especially these days, most people don't get that experience, which means they never really develop a strong personality, which means it's a lot easier for them to succumb to like groupthink and social engineering and mass mind control techniques like the one you just described is a really good example of that effect anyway.
And I know, I don't remember which ancient civilization it was I was reading about, but they would actually consider, so intercourse to them or making love was a big deal back then. It wasn't, and they knew when they were going to conceive, they would basically perform a ceremony, and they knew that was the night they were gonna have their child, and that would actually be considered the birthday of the child. They would celebrate the night of conception, or the day of conception, as the birthday, not the actual physical birth, which is really interesting. That just shows you our ancestors, the spiritual knowledge they had compared to where we are now. And I know a lot of that is because we've been manipulated, but it really makes you think about, it makes you think about a lot of stuff, you know, if you really break it down. It's interesting.
Oh yeah, totally. There's a reason they've spent so much time trying to make history or the people who lived in the past seem like antiquated cavemen, you know, people didn't know any better kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, obviously we've made advances over the years, but to say that wisdom that was working, you know, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago is just useless. That's just not true. You know, it's just not the way reality works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I just I don't know. There's so much we can learn from just studying. Well, it's hard to study history because it's been skewed, but when you learn how to look at it from a spiritual aspect, um, and you know what to look for, there's so much to learn about us and even our future. You know what we're capable of. I
Yeah.
think. Go ahead.
Oh,
Aaron.
sorry. I was just gonna say, what I've noticed is, they really program us to live out of a place of fear, and that's kind of what keeps the whole system going. Because if you look at our society and you look at everything, literally every aspect is rooted in a place of fear. It's in survival, you know.
Yeah.
And you're programmed from day one to live in that place. So you're not living from a place of, oh, I love everyone and I can trust everyone and I can, you know, I can be creative and do what I love and be at peace and, you know, love, joy, peace, all the things that we're supposed to be experiencing as human beings on this planet. And instead we're programmed to live, oh, I need to survive, I need to make money, I need to make sure I got what I need and look out for myself.
Well,
and like I need to be afraid and I need to like, it's all these low vibrational fear-based things. And we just kind of get this programmed into us from day one. And if you stay in that, it just kind of runs your life. If you don't ever question why you do things, you just follow the programming, you just get stuck in this place of fear and you just get stuck in this low vibration and it just kind of like runs your life.
Well, that was kind of the purpose of the whole cabal, is to keep us existing in a survival frequency.
yeah.
And part of the awakening is learning how to exist in a frequency of empowerment. You know, because like you said, it's not just fear, it's distraction. It's everything. You know, there's no there's no
It's
quality of life, and people don't understand quality of life because I work a 40-hour job still, and people, when you talk to people and have real conversations with them, somebody quality of life might be working 40 hours a week, then going to do work on the side during the weekends because they're chasing the money and they're making money and they're really doing good. They got all this stuff saved up, blah, blah, blah. But then there's no free time. And when I ask people, what do you do in your free time? They don't have a good answer for me.
Right.
They've become so disconnected. They don't even understand the quality of life that they could be having.
yeah,
They,
like yeah, like most people's free time is just like, oh, I just do whatever to like relax, or but they don't really have anything they're like passionate about that they're like, this is what I live for, you know,
and not
this is what I want
everybody.
to do. It's just like, no, I just work a shitty job that I don't like to pay the bills, and then I spend the
Right.
rest of my time trying to forget about that and getting drunk or like, doing whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is one of the reasons they've systematically tried to control. Spirituality is a pretty good general term for it, but I would say that the hidden definition of religion is your personal experience in exploring the divine and then in turn yourself. So it has to be a personal experience. If you go to a major religion, you're gonna see the same kind of ideas, but they're prepackaged. It's like walking into like a quickie mart instead of making the food yourself or something like that.
It's like, here's
So,
the truth. Take
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And from a spiritual evolution perspective, you don't evolve by memorizing bland, dead intellectual facts. You evolve by contemplating this stuff and integrating it and studying it and asking yourself, well, what does this mean? And then in the act of studying what it means, it actually creates these deeper structures in your consciousness that literally change who you think you are in relation to all that is. So it's one of the big things, the reasons why religion has been so in charge of trying to control what people think of the universe is and what their relationship to it is, because if people organically started doing that, then they would start to develop a lot of empowerment. And some of the I guess you could say, the better spiritual circles out there. I mean, even I would say, to contextualize this properly, in the modern era, we have this explosion of different types of spirituality. We have New Ageism, we have Hermeticism, we have, the Blavatsky kind of New Ageism. We've got like the law of attraction type of New Age. And a lot of these, they sound really good on the surface, and they do have a lot of good things in them, but it's just the same model of believe this, don't think too hard. You know what I mean? Just blindly keep following this thing.
Yeah.
So
This is the truth. Don't try to question it. Don't try to figure out if it's true or not. Just accept it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I have noticed that. Sorry. I just want to say this real quick. I have
Go ahead.
noticed, because a lot of people will leave like Christianity or leave another religion and then get into New Age spirituality, but then they just fall into another religion that they don't realize it. If it's the version of New Age that's, don't look at anything negative, because then you're attracting it, or you're creating that.
Right.
Everything's love and light. Only focus on that. Only focus on good, positive, like positivity. And here, like, it's very dangerous, because you're falling into another belief system that you're programmed to not ever accept or look into anything negative that's going on the planet, and you're just bypassing all that. That's when you're spiritual bypassing. That's what that is. You're allowing yourself to let things happen that shouldn't be happening, because you're just told you're not supposed to look at it.
Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's not how, like, we do create our own reality. I definitely believe that, and we can manifest reality, and that's what we're constantly doing. But there's a difference between that and just completely ignoring what's actually happening,
Totally.
on the planet.
Yeah.
Something I found interesting. So I just recently started learning about witches, I guess witchcraft. I don't know. a group that I belong to, the most recent meeting was about, where the term witch originated, what really, how it came about, and who were witches and paganism and all that stuff. And so really when it first started, uh, it was like a very spiritual, very high consciousness thing. They practiced natural curing, natural healing remedies. Apparently, the cone their witches had, there was a cone shape that was supposed to represent higher consciousness.
Mm.
And eventually, they became a threat when Catholic religion started rising. They became a threat to the Catholic religion, and then that's when they started getting pinned as evil, and that's how the whole witch trials began.
Right.
In a nutshell, I guess I had never dove into the topic, but it was just like it was a really beautiful thing that was happening, and it was like almost the beginning of to see the cabal. That was like the beginning of the cabal, essentially stopping these, because they were understanding higher consciousness. They were understanding how to cure themselves and heal themselves, and this was a threat. And this was the first. After learning about
Yeah.
this, I really understand why we are where we are today. I never would have traced it back to starting with a witch, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's a favorite tactic that they like to use, is they like to demonize anything that is a threat, anything that empowers humanity and is a threat to them. Well, because empowering humanity is a threat to them in
Right.
and of itself. And they will just demonize it. Yeah, like you said, with witches. And then you look at the hippie movement when that started. That was a huge threat to them. So they're like, all right, we gotta shut this down. In you look at Charles Manson when he came out. If you really look into him, it very much looks like he was created by the cabal to kind of shut down the hippie movement. And
Right.
Interesting.
and get this serial killer going around killing people, and
Right.
make it look like a dangerous thing, and then everyone just wants to stay away from it. And it works. It's worked really well, and they basically have used what works well over and over throughout history. When you really study history, they use the same
Totally.
tactics over and over.
Oh yeah, they don't really innovate much. There's a researcher, Mark Passio. He's a really great researcher.
He's awesome.
And,
Love
yeah,
Mark Passio.
One of the things he says that I completely agree with is that the dark occult, they don't really know how to innovate anything. And there's a very good reason psychologically why that's the case, because trauma destroys your creative centers and your holistic brain function.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these guys use the same basic models again and again and again. And what you were talking about, Tyler, is this whole witch idea. So one of the tactics they like to use is from a psychological perspective, if people aren't raised properly, then they develop what are called personality alters. And these personality alters are governed usually by biological or animalistic disgust mechanisms. So a disgust mechanism is you see something in your environment, you instinctually don't want to be around it, therefore you move away from it. And animals have disgust mechanisms. That's what prevents them from, eating bad food that's going to kill them, or like a dead body or something like this. Well, in human beings, it can get really distorted, especially when the parenting process is distorted. So you have these culturally instantiated disgust mechanisms. So a taboo is a culturally instantiated disgust mechanism. What that means is that if they can convince people that something is reprehensible or socially disgusting, then a whole bunch of people, because they fear being cast out of their social group, will now start to rage against that thing that has just been labeled disgusting. The witch example you just talked about earlier is a perfect example of that. You take these people, they're just minding their own business, doing their own thing. I mean, arguably some of them maybe weren't doing such great things. Probably a lot of them were doing, nothing too threatening, but they were threatening the church. You convince people through an elaborate PR campaign that the witches are bad and they're, killing kids or doing something socially reprehensible, which they've used that propaganda a lot. As a matter of fact, if you look at World War I propaganda and French Revolution propaganda and Bolshevik Revolution propaganda, the progenitors or the people they were trying to cast as villains, they almost always cast them as like baby killers, baby rapists, really horrible things, because what that does is it activates your disgust mechanism. And as soon as you're in disgust mechanism mode, your brain centers stop working properly. You kind of go into this like animalistic groupthink mode, and then you're just ready to like get your pitchfork out and start killing people. So now we have, a good example of that is the witch issue from before. There's many examples. That one's around like I believe it's like the 1600s. Now we have a Trump supporter.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Now you have Nazis. So what happens when you don't like what somebody says? You call them a Trump supporter. You call them a Nazi, and it's like that. All of a sudden, the masses, the mob, the unthinking masses just descend on you and dogpile you and try to smash you and kill you. So
yeah, I just quit my band about 6 months ago because of that. Actually,
really,
yeah.
That was your reason for quitting, actually?
It
Or
was
did
a
they
little
kick
more
you
than
out?
that, but that was kind of the last straw, so to speak.
Yeah,
I got
it's a shame. That's a
I got
shame.
attacked on two of them. First commented publicly on some posts I made attacking me, and then they both sent me messages at the same time attacking me.
wow.
Because they just couldn't believe I would. It was around the time when the Kavanaugh stuff was going on and and all that, so it was a lot of very politically charged time of a lot of the people on the left were you're evil if you if you
Well,
think
that's another perfect example. It's another perfect example.
Yeah, and it was just this group think. I saw it so clearly. I'm just like, you guys, like, I was trying to be like, can we just chill and like have a discussion about this? Can we just talk instead of like just this reactionary like slinging insults and you're a horrible person? And they seem to not really have an interest in that. So I'm like, well, it was that, and it was just the fact that I had made it clear that I support Trump as a president. And they knew I was into Q, and they were all against that. And I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Well, that's really weird. Just the way you actually hesitated right there to say you supported Trump. Trump has become such a taboo word almost.
Yeah, it's still like like, oh, I like, I guess I do support him. Like, it's weird.
Yeah, but I know somebody who just started deleting people off of her Facebook who were Trump supporters. Didn't matter if she was friends with them or not. Just delete. And it's just unbelievable. And yeah, speaking of,
if you're a Trump supporter, delete me now. I've seen those posts a lot.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, that's a perfect example of that. And one thing, I wasn't even necessarily a Trump supporter when it all came out, but I kind of got this like, support the underdog kind of leaning to me. So if I know somebody's getting dogpiled, I know somebody's maybe not getting the fairest treatment, I'll give them a little bit more leeway. So I was looking into Trump, and people kept calling him a racist and all these things and sexist. So I'm like, okay, well, I study epistemology. Epistemology is the study of why you know something is true. It's basically like the science of discernment. So if somebody says Trump is a racist, I say, okay, great. That's your claim. What's your evidence? What's your argument? And literally everybody I talked to, and I talked to hundreds of people, nobody really had an answer.
Nope.
They're like, oh, well, he said Mexicans were rapists. And I'd be like, well, first of all, Mexicans aren't a race. That's a nationality. And secondly, did you hear what he actually said? Because if you actually listen to the statements he said, he did not say that at all. What he said was that some of the people that were coming over were reprehensible people. And this is the reason why we need to have border security. Mind you, if the same policy that Trump is using right now is the exact same one that was pushed by Obama, the exact same one that was pushed by Bush, and the same ones that Clinton and all these other people who are supposedly for open borders 4 years ago, we're all talking about the same thing. So this is a perfect example, like you were saying, Tyler. It's a perfect example of using the fear of social ostracization, the fear of being cast out of your social group, as a manipulation tool to get you to slip into a false belief system. And it works beautifully. It works flawlessly. I mean, we were talking about this off, before we're getting on air, and that you got to really give respect to the cabal. And, in this instance, I mean, they're playing people like fiddles. Most people are just buying into it, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
especially in the awakening community. A ton of people in the awakening community are buying into it. So, this is one of the things that just to get on my soapbox here for a second, this is why I really preach discernment, because discernment is so vitally important. It's so easy to be led astray in life. And if you're not careful, you're driving off a cliff and you're taking a whole bunch of people behind you because you've strong-armed them into believing what you think is the right thing, but you don't even know yourself. So you really got to take the time to do discernment, be brave, go into your own belief system and say, how do I really know, is this true? And be honest with yourself. If you don't have a good answer, then try to deal with that and process that. It's going to be a hard thing. It's definitely one of these moments where you go from being an infant mentally to being an adult. Once you do that, man, the rest of your life just opens up in a big, amazing way.
Yeah. It's kind of like you take control of your own life, essentially, rather than letting others control you, is essentially what you're doing when you're just believing things because you were told to believe them by, whether it's the mainstream media, a religion, a teacher, a group, all my friends believe this. So, I really see that a lot. Like, a lot of people, I think they just want to like fit in with their friends or the group of people they're around. So they just kind of like adopt whatever belief they have, and they haven't really like researched thought too much about it. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, everyone believes this, or everyone that's a good person believes this, and they have their own kind of like false rationale to it,
Sure. It becomes cool if it's cool to believe it, which is another point. Like, well, first of all, another part of discernment is taking sometimes it's taking a step away from the news and the politics and everything else, and just going into meditation. Because when you follow it so much, if you're just constantly, oh my God, watching this, I think we've talked about this before, you just lose sight of where you are. But when you go into meditation, really work on yourself, then it just seems like discernment kind of comes naturally. It's a lot easier to figure out, okay, this feels good, this is bullshit,
Right. Yeah, you need a healthy sense of detachment, I would say.
Yeah.
One of the things I posted an article, I decided in September of 2018 that I really needed to kind of write like a quick and dirty manual on discernment, which isn't really quick and dirty. It's a pretty lengthy post, but it's
it's
if
really
you go
good,
to my we were talking about it off air. It's called the 4 key steps of discernment. If you go to my website, Stillness in the Storm, one of the tabs up there, it's like Discernment Essentials. I highly suggest everybody take a look at that, because one of the things you'll likely realize as you start to get to know yourself more is that I would say you can kind of categorize people in 2 ways. You have the people who are really seeking the truth and allowing themselves to get transformed and shaken up in the process. And then you get the people who are really just looking to maintain what they think is true. So they're looking for information that confirms their beliefs. Mm-hmm. And the reason they're doing that is because the beliefs are like the container that contain your identity. So you identify with your beliefs, and your beliefs literally shield you psychologically from chaos. So in order to really become an authentic truth seeker, you have to learn how to embrace chaos. You have to learn how to embrace the ever-flowing change that you're going to experience as you seek the truth. And in this post, I wrote down a lot of the good tips and strategies for people to how to use the discernment properly and wisely. I also wrote a post called Mind Hacks for Enlightenment, where I talk about the relationships between your belief system and your truth and what that actually does for your reality. Because a lot of people think that we're interacting with reality, like, there's a screen here and, it's actually here and I'm touching it. But what's really happening is that your senses are acting like an intermediary. So what you actually experience as reality is literally a biological virtual reality environment. Everything's created in your brain. Yep. And because of that, everything has meaning, and it's actually tied to your beliefs, how you see the world, how you see reality. This is something in psychology called goal-oriented perception, where depending on what goal or thing, a task that you have in your mind, you literally see reality differently. So if you're not aware, if you're not taking the time to really understand yourself and look to see, well, who am I? Why am I studying this information? Why is information, if you're into extraterrestrials, why is information about extraterrestrials so important to you? Why is it that you want to hear about, alien worlds and how enlightened they are and whatnot? Ask yourself these questions. Some people don't ask these questions. And I'm not trying to, dog on anybody for their chosen belief. I actually think all the information is really important. But if you don't take the time to look within, then you could easily deceive yourself and create a false tapestry or a false base or foundation. One of the things that's a really deep truth in what I would say spirituality is that in the seeking of knowledge about the world, you're actually seeking to know yourself. Because when you go out and explore the world, let's imagine you're going to a restaurant and you want to try a new dish for the first time. Well, you're trying it. Do you know you're going to like it? No, not really. You have no idea. You've never tried it before. So when you explore the dish, you're also exploring how you react to the dish, which then in turn gets to you to know who you are. So if you really have what I call a metacognitive process where you're looking outside of you to explore information, but then you're also looking within to see how you react to that information, what that says about who you are. Now you've really got an amazing process for knowing thyself. And that will start to decouple a lot of the programs, because a lot of the cabal manipulation programs are all designed on you not knowing yourself. So you're kind of like wandering around in the dark aimlessly, just from one thing to another. I call it like information addiction or information infotainment.
Yeah.
People, they don't really understand what they're reading, but they have to constantly consume more. The latest update, the latest UFO whistleblower, the latest Q post. So
Yeah. I see a lot of people there's a lot of people that will like share just like everything on Facebook.
for sure.
And a lot of it's really good, and I'm like, yeah, and then a lot of it's like not so good. or like pretty like, I don't know about that, but they get caught up, like you said, in this information. Like they get excited about the information, but they don't use discernment, and
Or they
like, is this actually something I should be sharing, or is this actually
or
possibly true?
they share stuff without, I know a lot of people share things without even reading. They'll read the headline and then they'll share it.
Yeah,
You gotta watch out, because a lot of it you gotta click it and read it, because
there's
some
a
of
lot
it
of
might
clickbait out there. Yeah.
some of it's just bullshit clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, speaking of Facebook, I officially got put in Facebook timeout today.
Oh, really? Congratulations.
Yeah.
It was a
badge of honor.
post. It was a comment to one of the links on To the Stars Academy's page.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of posted on. It was a link to their new series on the History Channel. It's supposed to be questioning why UFOs are a potential threat to our nation and the national security, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of made a post saying how it's just more fear mongering, blah blah blah. And then somebody asked me, they said, "How do you know that UFOs are not a threat?" And then this was the comment that got me.
It was a really good comment.
They said, "How do you know that UFOs are not a threat?" And this is a comment that got me banned from Facebook. I said, "Secret space programs, whistleblowers, my own ET contact, Q, and just an overall spiritual understanding of who we are, how we got here, and the planet being at the end of a 25,000-year cycle. The powers that be, or the powers that were, who want to control the narrative on ETs and UFOs, want us afraid so they can maintain control. These are the ones feeding Tom DeLonge with this fear aspect. They are being removed from power behind the scenes every day. To the Stars was supposed to go a lot differently than it is, but Hillary lost, and that's when their plan failed. Light is taking over the planet, and nothing can stop it. It's a natural cycle." And they decided that was worth banning me, blocking me. I'm not allowed to do anything on Facebook, and they didn't give me a time limit.
No kidding. Well, that's interesting. Wow. Yeah, well, there you go. They got some kind of algorithm out there. I know my site, I was on Facebook, the page that I had was getting a pretty decent organic growth. And then they changed something, and my growth went from, it probably lost like 95% of its momentum. And it supposedly gets like a certain number of like 100 likes a week, but it's been sitting at the number that it's at, like 51,000, for like a year and a half now. So clearly
Really?
there's manipulation happening.
Yeah.
But this is a good sign. Maybe we should talk into, I know we've gotten into like the super deep, like philosophy stuff, which I love. I could play here all day, but I know probably people are probably hankering for like the nuts and bolts, like tell us about the alliance kind of thing. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Let's do it.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
well,
yeah. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I'm involved personally in a pretty exciting group. I can't really talk much about it, but one of the things we're doing is it's called the Restore the Rule of Law. And basically the way that the control mechanisms work, they're all founded on a lawful structure that's held and maintained by the Vatican. And if you look at one of the ways to really trace back, like, well, who are the power players, who's making all these influences, a lot of time we say follow the money. Instead of following the money, you should follow the law. And if you follow the law, you get back way farther than you would if you follow the money. And some of these groups and organizations that have been created, the baseline foundations for how our control system work, they reach back thousands and thousands of years, all the way back into Sumerian times and arguably much further before.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're doing is we're creating an entirely new lawful system, and it's actually already been developed, that allows us to basically operate our spiritual essence on a completely different spiritual structure. And the law and spirit are fundamentally related with each other. And one of the reasons why they make law sound so dusty and boring is because they don't want people to understand this stuff. But if people really, if we as a group of people, just even like a small percentage of the awakening community, really studied law and all got on the same page together, we would be unstoppable. So that's one of the things I'm working on right now. There's going to be a lot of information that's going to be coming out. We had a really big victory in the past couple weeks with some things that are going down. And so that's really exciting. Nice. So there is an alliance right now that is working at multiple different levels. I'm personally involved in one of those aspects. Nice. Of the law aspect, which, it trickles into all sorts of different areas: London, the Vatican, Bank of International Settlements, things like this. So there's also the Q Alliance, the Q team, you might say. Now, I'm not a huge Q researcher, so I can't sit here and quote like Q posts and what, exactly what they mean and things like this, because it's a massive body of information. Yeah. But I do look at it from a top-down socio-political perspective. And one of the things that I think is inarguable from a claim perspective is that Q is unquestionably activating people's consciousness. He's putting out information. He's doing so in a way that it's called the Socratic method. So he asks a lot of questions because he doesn't want to give you the answer. He wants you to find the answer. And the mere fact that he uses that method, I would argue, proves that the people behind Q, they really understand how the cabal control mechanism works, and they're actively working to undermine it at a literal psychological personal level.
Yeah, it's like they're doing the exact opposite of what the cabal does. Of like,
exactly,
the cabal gives you the answers they want you to have, and then you don't start thinking, you don't start on a train of thought for yourself, you just have the answer, right? So what Q's been doing is putting out all these questions that you need to ask yourself to get you thinking, to get you on the right train of thought, to find the truth and to find the answers.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's really important. If one of the reasons why society has crumbled into basically a volunteer slavery system, or slavery through money, or whatever way you want to describe the slavery system, it's based on the fact that you don't know what you're doing. All these muscles and tools that allow you to be sovereign, to guide your own life without being dependent on somebody to tell you what's real, they aren't there. So what the beautiful thing about Q from that level, something that I've observed, is that it's actually making people better truth seekers. They can think better. They're getting more critical thinking. And initially, it's a longer plan or agenda, because, it's a little easier to just tell people what to believe, and they're going to probably believe it real quick. But as far as being useful, it's not really all that useful. It doesn't necessarily rally the troops. On the other hand, if you can start to get people to think and develop their own personal sovereignty, which is one of the things that Q is doing, well, it takes a little longer because people have their own process, and it takes a while. You think about it like going up a mountain, right? You can get behind the gondola, and you can all pile into the gondola and ride your way up to the mountain, or everybody can go along their own track up the mountain. At first, they're all coming from different places, so nobody sees each other. But eventually, as you start going up, you start meeting the people because they get closer up the mountain. So in a sense, that's what's happening with Q. That, you know, a few years ago, it's almost 2 years now. When I think it went, no, a year. I'm sorry, because it came out on October 30th. So October 31st, 2017, I think, or 28.
Year and a half.
Year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah, year and a half.
Now we have these, you know, there's people who came out against Q and said a whole bunch of, in my opinion, fallacious things that don't hold water. And then there's the actual analysts, and then there's the actual material. And if you put all the cards on the table and you look at the people who've kind of followed it along, there's a growing body of people who really are slowly coming together at a like boots on the ground level. So I would say this alliance is like a top-down alliance that's working, instead of trying to work its way to kind of just work at the top, it's actually working at the top, and then it's working up underneath at the same time.
Exactly.
So there's this like top-down kind of thing that's slowly happening. And we have legions of people. I think the last estimate I saw, which Q posted himself, I think he said it was like 60 million people or something like that were into Q in just the United States.
Wow.
Which is massive.
That is,
you know?
huge. Yeah. That is massive.
I think it's interesting that people, so for some reason, I don't know why, when I refer to Q or when I think of Q, I think of they, but then there's a lot of people that refer to Q as him. And I know we really don't know, but it's funny. It's just interesting to me because it like somehow I just jumped to they, and to hear someone else explain it, talking about him. Who in your mind, who is Q? Or do you have any idea or thoughts on that?
I mean, I have a few ideas based on not the best case, but I'd say the most honest answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
That being said, though, I would say it seems as though Trump or somebody around Trump is feeding the Q team information. There's Q, and then there's Q plus.
Q plus seems to be Trump.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, it seems like that's Trump. And, you know, I'm not a linguist, so I don't study necessarily the specifics of linguism, but I'm pretty detail-oriented when it comes to linguistic analysis. And just the phraseology of Q plus and Trump, there's a strong correlation there.
Yep.
So it seems like Trump could be Q. And then on top of it, I mean, there's just so many instances of, you know, I'm sure you've heard these like Q proofs before.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Trump is saying something, he'll point to like the guy, I think it was in July of this year, who was wearing the Q shirt. There was a motorcade from this past summer where these people were honk if you love Q, and then the motorcade honked. And then in the recent CPAC speech, I believe, I haven't confirmed this yet, the photo that I grabbed for the CPAC speech, it had a photo of Trump standing there, and the flag was over his left shoulder in the photo, but it's actually his right shoulder, like in real life. And the way that the flag filigree was folded around the flag, it literally looked just like a Q.
Nice. The Christmas photo that Trump posted with his family, one of the stockings had a Q on it, right?
Yeah,
it
exactly.
was but it was like an O with it's like they deliberately put a piece of tape on it to make it a Q. So not only was it a Q, but they deliberately put tape on it to make it into a Q.
Right, exactly.
And Trump will like tweet something like right after Q posts.
Same timestamp.
Yeah. Trump will like say like one of the phrases that Q will say. Trump will have it at the end of his tweet. He's done that a lot, stuff like that.
There's so many Q proofs, you can't even really keep up with them. I mean,
yeah, there's so many. It's when you really look into it,
right?
Like, I don't see how you could come to any other conclusion that, at the very least, Trump is connected to this Q and to the Q movement.
Certainly.
In some way, you can dog it all you want and say like, you know, nothing's going to happen. They're not actually doing anything. But you can't dispute that Trump is not connected to it. When you actually look into it, you know, there's just way too much evidence.
Oh yeah, a really good source to follow is Serial Brain 2. I'm sure you guys have heard of.
I have. Yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah,
he's great. You know, and from an epistemological perspective, you know, how do we know that this analysis information is true? One of the big things you got to understand when you're discerning is that a claim is itself a description of reality, and that evidence is used to support that. But there's a whole lot of gray area. So when you're discerning something, instead of thinking of discernment as like this magic recipe that gives you a yes or no answer and it's always true, that's not the way discernment works. What discernment actually does is it gives you possible answers, and then you have to try to figure out what you think is right, and then you just go on faith, like, well, this one seems to be right, so I'm going to act like this one is true and see what happens. That's what's called pragmatism in philosophy. So when it comes to and analyzing these proofs, a lot of people rag on Serial Brain 2 because he's pulling out numerology, he's taking like post times and timestamps and making these numerological correlations. He's doing gematria to boil down these numbers and these words into numbers, and then he's extracting from that other words.
He's insanely brilliant.
He is.
The
So
stuff he does.
And what a lot of people complain about is like, oh, well, he's just finding connections that don't exist.
Impossible.
That's not true, though. That's not true.
Nope.
The connections are there. He's picking one interpretation out of many possible interpretations and saying this is the intended meaning. Now, whether or not that's the intended meaning or not, we don't know. But one thing you can't deny, it is dishonest to deny, is to say that this objective relationship, it doesn't exist. It does exist, unquestionably. You know what I mean? So then this is another one of these points where it's like, this is the kind of, it's from some people who want really hard answers, it frustrates the hell out of them because you don't get the hard answers. You don't get the yes or no answer.
Well, like you said, it points you in it just gives you a starting point to do it on your own. So they're not going to get that answer. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad you interjected. So there's people who really want that specific answer. And I get it. A lot of people, let's face it, to learn how to discern, to learn how to do these things, it takes time, a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. It takes bravery, because in the act of questioning your own truths, you're like, holy crap, I don't really know as much as I thought I knew. And that can shake you to your foundations.
Yeah.
But once you go through that,
it can be damaging to the ego too. A lot of people, they have this huge ego, like, oh, I'm so smart, I know all this stuff. And as soon as you start like talking to them and being like trying to walk them through this discernment process, and a lot of them will just kind of shut you out, like, no, I already know the truth. Like,
they don't want to take the time.
It's not worth, because it's like a threat to their
looking into it.
It's a threat to the ego when you already think you have all the answers, or you have the answer to something.
Precisely.
And then you start realizing, oh, I don't. I've never
taken as much as
to discover.
As much as I've learned in the past few years, 3-4 years, going through everything, waking up to all these realities, and just the ET aspect of it alone blows my mind, and the Q and everything else. As much as I've learned, what do we really know? Still, we know nothing. We're down here at the bottom of the pyramid still. We're waking up, and that's changing. But like you said, Aaron, it's like you just, what you thought you knew, it just totally has been shattered. And even still, like every day, it's just constantly learning.
Yeah, you really just got to question everything. That's what it comes down to. Don't ever just accept anything at face value, or just blindly accept anything. Question everything, research everything, use the discernment method that you talked about with everything. And it takes time, it takes effort, energy. It probably is going to take some deprogramming to a lot of stuff you want to believe, or that you already thought you knew. And that's what I had to do when I started my awakening journey. I had all these like Christian answers to everything that I was programmed with, and it was like one crack in the wall showed up, and I'm like, okay, well, if this thing's not true, or seems to not be true based on my own research, what else have I been just blindly believing that could possibly not be true?
Yeah, it just leads you down the rabbit hole.
And I just went, and I just kept going. And then suddenly it was like, before I was closed off, I had like a wall put up to anything outside of my box, right? That didn't agree with my own belief system. Suddenly, once I questioned everything, for the first time in my life, I'm open to all possibilities, right? To anything and everything. Like, so I just went down every rabbit hole I could. I just started. That's why I got, I started looking into spiritual concepts and to ETs and to conspiracy stuff. I found David Icke, I found David Wilcock, I found Stephen Greer, even though that's another topic.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, what happens? What happens is
info agent,
it starts to snowball. You know, you get into one thing and it snowballs into another, and then next thing you know, you're here 1 year, and then a couple of years later, you're like, you look back and like, not even the same person anymore.
It's I'm a completely different person than I was. Let's see, 2012 was really when my awakening started. So 8 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
A completely different person. And, but at the same time, I didn't just blindly accept every single, every bit of information I came across. I didn't just go, okay, that's true. Or, or, oh, I've heard that a few times, so that's probably true. Even that is, it's very dangerous because you have to be very, very discerning. And that's what basically taught me to be discerning and to use discernment. Because I would just come across so much information that was new to me that I'm like, okay, how do I know what's true? How do I figure out what, there's so much information. There's so much stuff. Like, how do I know if what I'm hearing and what I'm coming across is true or not?
Right.
So I just kind of naturally started like figuring out how to discern that.
Well, you said it earlier, Justin, is taking everyone's perspectives and kind of intertwining them together, weaving them together. And that's how you create your own, version of your reality, I guess, of your version of disclosure. You have to, you can't just take one person's testimony and ride with that. And you got to look at everybody's. That's what Aaron was just saying. You said it earlier. And, and it really does, that's really key to understanding, any of this information.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I think, that part of the alliance knows this. I would say probably the best example we have of an alliance is the Q phenomenon. For many years, we heard rumors, we heard people, insiders, whistleblowers saying that there was an alliance, but it's hard to tell if there's anything that's true there, because sometimes the things they're talking about are off world. So you can't go out there yourself and say, well, yeah, there's definitely this happened. But now with the Q phenomenon, we have real tangible things that you as an individual or the audience or people, we the people, we can go out and we can look with our own two eyes at this stuff, and we can start to see and comprehend that, yeah, there really is a conspiracy out there. So, I think one of the things that's really encouraging that's coming from the whole Q phenomenon is that it's causing a really organic awakening, and people are finally kind of crawling out of the proverbial cave, so to speak, and walking into the light and starting to really learn that they have the skills within themselves to better understand the truth and reality. And then once that happens, I think it's really an initiation from like a psychological perspective. It's, if you're familiar with the hero's journey, the hero's journey is echoed everywhere in film and TV. And the story basically goes like this: you're innocent, you're living on the Shire, everything's beautiful, everything's perfect, you don't have to worry about anything. And then you hear some kind of calling, some call to adventure. And in that call to adventure, you get humbled. You realize, wait a minute, this little world that I thought was all perfect actually isn't perfect. There's this really big problem. There's this thing that if I don't figure out how to solve, my little world, my family, my Shire, my little pocket of universe is going to come crumbling down. And then that calls you to go out into the world. You go to the abyss, you go face the dragon, you face your fear. In the act of facing your fear, you activate a part of yourself that you didn't even know was there. You gain spiritual powers, you gain powers of consciousness and sovereignty. And then now you can go back to your village with the golden fleece, with the gold, with the dragon scale, and give the rewards back to your tribe, so to speak. Well, that's what this is really doing for an individual capacity. I mean, a lot of people, the reason why people are so are catalyzed, I think, a lot from the Q phenomenon, is that first of all, it's pretty easy to digest truths. We're not talking about like really crazy stuff. So that helps a lot, especially in the beginning. But secondly, once you realize that, it's all these problems of corruption. I mean, that's one of the things that really activated me when I started waking up, is I always wondered why the world was such a screwed up place. And for years, I just didn't know what the problem was. And I kind of almost like just accepted that things were just screwed up. And I figured, oh, well, this is just human nature.
Yeah,
no,
humanity is just inherently evil, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. The same, the repackaged original sin. So,
Yeah.
but one of the things I realized after waking up from Cures for Cancer is that no, there are answers. And once you have that answer, once you make contact with a fundamental truth that helps you better understand your reality, there's like something comes alive inside you. You transform, and now you want to go out and you want to like tell the world and scream it from the rooftops. And that's what's happening with the Q phenomenon. There's so many people who are going out there and doing that. And right now, from a grand spiritual perspective, there's a book I really like. I'm constantly going back to it, not because I believe it absolutely, because it has just tons of really good ideas in it. It's called the Urantia book.
Yeah.
And
have it right over here.
Oh, do you? Nice, man.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I haven't started reading it yet, but I have it.
Right, go right on. It's definitely a big beefy one for sure.
Yeah.
Well, they have whole sections in there describing what the actual divine plan for causing evolution in spirit on these worlds are. And basically what they're describing is that things take time. There's a slow evolution. And a lot of times from the temporal perspective, from the here and now, things look really crazy. There's a lot of chaos. We're living in a time right now of like, if I walked into Charlottesville, which is the town, it's a city next to me because I live in Virginia, and I had a Make America Great Again hat on, I might get jumped.
Yeah.
I might get beaten up because we're in this time of bifurcation. But this is actually good, because what's happening is in the act of bifurcating, in the act of causing a lot of tension, the people who are gaining discernment, who are gaining true knowledge, who are thinking critically, the Q followers, are butting up against the NPCs, the people who don't think, the people who are deep state controlled, the COINTELPRO people. And this is the beautiful part. Everybody around them gets to watch it unfold. And then in the process, they wake up. So right now it seems really chaotic. And this is something I try to reinforce when I talk about these things, is that, yes, I'm out there looking for all this crazy stuff, news related, and it can often seem like, well, I'm just fear mongering. But no, that's not the case. What I'm doing is I'm trying to find these heralds, these omens, these comets in the sky that let people know that, hey, things are really moving forward in an amazing way. If you learn how to see things properly, if you learn how to see things from a holistic, truthful perspective, then we have amazing signs of incredible spiritual awakening, consciousness evolution happening right here, right now. And it's truly amazing.
Well, you definitely see I'm starting to see a turn. Even I do the same thing. I'll check out media just to see the direction it's heading, or sometimes I'll go out somewhere and it'll be on TV. But you're definitely seeing snippets of I guess what you call awakening material, truth being just kind of snuck in there. And it's just like a sign. It's just like you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, just a little bit. Like it's kind of like I Googled the term loosh the other day, and it brought up, I don't know if you guys saw that on Facebook, but
I saw it.
Man, I wish I could remember what
it was pretty spot on. Actually, I was surprised.
Like a meme or something, or
yeah. So no, I just Googled loosh because just based off of a post that I saw, and the very top.
Can you screen share in here? I haven't even looked into that.
You should be able to. Whoever the host is, yeah,
right? Yeah, or just me, I guess.
Yeah, you could screen share. Yeah.
All right, 1 second.
You can find it.
Did you find it, Aaron?
1 second.
It's pulling it up. We can keep shooting. So why don't you keep describing while I look it up? Tyler.
It literally used the word reptilians and archons and demon energy being used to control and manipulate the human population, that in a nutshell. And that was the top result on the Google search.
Wow.
The fact that they even used the word reptilian.
You know what's interesting? It's no longer the top result.
It's not.
Is it really?
No,
but the second and third result is.
Right on.
So
yeah.
The Urban Dictionary, the Urban Dictionary definition is actually, it's pretty spot on.
Is it really? Nice.
Yeah.
What I got on there?
Yeah, it says New Age term applied to energy produced by human beings that other entities use to feed from.
Right. Here's the one. I don't know how this came up as a top result the other day. This is it. I found it. It says demonic entity beings, archons, and reptilians feed off low vibrational energy. Hence, that's why our world is focused on enticing low vibrational emotions for the global population.
Wow.
Just the fact that came up, even for a day,
Sure.
as a top result, that gives you a sign on what's where we're going, and the information. You know.
Oh yeah, exactly. So that's a really good sign. So you know, to I guess to put an end on the Q discussion, I would say probably the best example of alliance activity and things moving forward is Q. Now, to understand that, you have to really do your research. You have to understand all the various factors at play, and you have to take a really holistic, big picture perspective. One of the things I like to point out when we think about the kind of the spy versus spy aspect, or how the alliance works, a lot of people think that the alliance is like these pure beings that have never done any wrongdoing, and they're sitting in like an ivory tower and somewhere, and you know, one day they descend from Mount Olympus to come save the day. That's not the way it works at all. The way it works is that in a lot of cases, these people who are in the alliance are former cabal members themselves who have had a change of heart or a moral calling. Okay, or they're people who have, of their own volition, taken on the guise, they've put on the masks, the bad guy mask, so they can go into these circles and appear like a bad guy, you know? So when you're looking at these world leaders, you know, first of all, I'm not saying that anybody in the world leader camp is like definitively a white hat. I don't know. Trump could be like the incarnation of evil for all I know, or he could be the greatest guy, you know, in the world. But just to entertain the concept, again, from discernment, we got to make sure we're not pigeonholing ourselves in black and white answers here. It's not easy to tell whether or not somebody like, I don't know, Pope Francis, for example, the guy seems like a really nasty guy. Well, how is it that he's supposed to worm his way up to the top of an organization if he's just every chance he gets, he's stomping on deep state members? He can't. He has to play the game. He has to play ball. So, you know, that's something that you got to really to see the big picture, you got to look at the tapestry of events, all the various things that are happening. And then that'll give you a better idea. But even then, there's so much we don't know. I mean, it's like from a tip of the iceberg perspective, we have like a little pencil eraser that's poking up the surface, and there's like a giant Titanic size iceberg underneath the surface. So.
Exactly. And, you know, Q even says all the time, like in his drops, he says disinformation is necessary. And he's speaking with the Q drops, but like just expand that to like the greater picture. Like the alliance, you know, they had to infiltrate the cabal organizations to take them down. I mean, that's really they I think a long time ago they realized that's the only way they're going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to attack them. They control the militaries, you know, of the world. Like you're not going to be able to use force or vote them out, because you know they're above that whole system. They're the ones controlling it anyway. So they're like, we have to get on the inside somehow and infiltrate it. And the only way you're going to do that is to use their own methods against them. Like, you know, use deception, get on the inside, and then take them down that way. And another thing, like you said, it's not this black and white thing. Like, oh, the alliance, they're all these, you know, perfect people, and like, no, it's a lot of very flawed people, or a lot of people that were in the deep state or the cabal. And the way the cabal has operated for so many years is through control. And, you know, people grow up in these families, these, you know, cabal or Illuminati families. It's not like they have a choice. It's not like, you know, it's not like their parents are like, oh, so do you want to be in the Illuminati? Is that something, you know, do you want to sacrifice children? And
do you want to join the Illuminati?
Yeah. You know, like people
That's a good way of looking at it, though.
You got to think about this. Like people are forced to do terrible things. They grow up not only being programmed, but being traumatized, and, you know, just like everything imaginable to force them into being a certain way, into doing things. And then it's the system that, you know, like the way they control people is like they have all this information that they can bring out if you ever try to speak out against them, or they can just kill you. So, you know, everyone's just in constant fear of that. So
well, Stephen Greer did say it best in Unacknowledged. He said, you know, here's a bullet with your name on it, and it will find you if you ever speak out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best way to put it. And you're right. These people are. I love how you just summarize that, or maybe you didn't even summarize it, but I never thought about it as like you're born into it. You're forced to live that lifestyle.
Right.
And
So when someone, think of someone like that that grew up being forced to live in that and to live that way, and being forced to be a part of the cabal essentially, and for however they were able to break free, good for them. And so many of them have been doing that and joining up with the alliance, and then they have all this inside information because they were they've been in it for so long, and they know how they operate, they know what they do. And so you have that, I think, and then you also have the you have good people that intentionally infiltrated the cabal organizations from day one, pretending to be one of them, and then getting all the information and using it against them. So
I wonder how many double agents there were, somebody working for both sides, feeding.
Yeah, totally. There's a really good body of research I found a couple years ago. Very briefly, I'll give you a little recap of it. It's actually in an article I just released. If you go to the Stillness in the Storm Facebook page, it's right up at the top. It's the pinned post. It's the Deep State Religion Exposed. And in it, I describe not only what the... You've seen that one? Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I not only describe like what the basic framework of the deep state religion is, but I also describe how they're trying to sell it to you and how you're actually being indoctrinated in it and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
And what they do, this is it's really an ancient brand of faith, you might say. I loosely, this is my own term, this isn't actually what they go by, but I call it the Order of the Black Sun. And I'm kind of leaning on, researchers like Mark Passio and Fritz Springmeier on this, but the reason I give it that term is because the sun is representative of the light, the divine, the Lucifer concept. If you boil it down to its pure essence, what it actually just means is light bearer, somebody who has the wisdom and is giving it out. So you can have a positive light bearer, and there's many examples of that through history, like prophets, like Buddha, Jesus, things like this. So you can have a negative light bearer. So the sun in pure esoteric Freemasonry is supposed to represent the eye of providence, which represents the creator. It's the light of the creator coming down to earth and informing the people. That's what one of the positive interpretations of that symbol of the eye of the seal of the United States is, or the eye in the pyramid. Well, the negative order groups, they believe in the opposite. So they actually created a cult in 1666 by a man named Shabtai Tzvi. He declared himself the Jewish Messiah. And then he started going around and basically issuing all these reforms to the Jewish religion. Now, the Jewish religion by definition, it's extremely dogmatic. And basically nobody but the Messiah can attempt to change established doctrine. So what he did was he created this cult. The cult got really popular very quickly, and he was essentially promoting an agenda of sin. One of the leading ideologies was that, well, let me back up 1 second. In order for the Messiah to bring about the great awakening or the renewing of the earth, this happens in times of great sin or great virtue. So either the world is like really prosperous and beautiful and everybody's moral, or it's like really dark and nasty. Mm-hmm. So their philosophy was, well, since we can't all be saints, let us be sinners.
So we might, it's impossible to be perfect. So let's do as much evil as we can. Yeah,
exactly. And that was literally what they were promoting openly back then, openly doing this in 1666. Now, what's interesting is they went to Jerusalem. They tried to retake Jerusalem. The Sultan there at the time said, listen, guys, this isn't going to fly. You can either convert to Islam or we're going to kill you. So Tzvi converted to Islam, and then he instructed all his followers to do the same. And then they started a covert campaign to go behind. They would present themselves as one thing, as Christians, as Buddhists, as Protestants, as Jews, but behind the scenes, they were actually Sabbateans. And then what that faith was, that's actually a front group for this deeper, older satanic cult that I call the Order of the Black Sun, in my opinion. So it's important to understand that, because a lot of these people that you see out there, they're, especially in the cabal, they're running off of these old programs of corruption and infiltration. And you're not going to be able to see it if you're only looking at the surface. That's the reason why they destroy your critical thinking skills. It's the reason why they don't want you to think. They just want you to accept. It's because it's like judging a book by its cover. It's like seeing if a movie's good by only watching 5 minutes of it. I mean, you don't really know. So you have to do that deep dive and that dig. And when you do, you realize that a lot of the things that we have in our culture and our society are all basically like a form of soft, dark occultism or dark Satanism. So yeah.
Yeah, that's and I read something that said as soon as Trump took office, one of the first things Melania, his wife, did was have the White House blessed, and apparently there was a lot of satanic relics on display in the White House, and it was a very negative energy there. So she had it cleared. They had these relics removed, and basically just kind of a fresh start. So that tells you right there that they already knew what they were doing before they got in there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we're going a little over our time. You want to? I know you're going to be at Portal to Ascension. I just saw that. That's you want to? When is that? October?
Yeah, it's hold on one second. Let me make sure I'm pulling up the right dates here. Yeah, so it's going to be a conference in Irvine, California on October. It's going to be, if you're not familiar with Portal to Ascension, Neil Gar puts them together. He's a really great guy. It's October 4th through the 6th in Irvine, California. So you can go to www.ascensionconference.com. You can check that out. I was there last year. It was a great event. Really good high vibe people. Lots of good things there. Billy Carson's going to be there. Jason Quitt, a whole bunch of other people. So definitely come and check it out. And I'm going to be giving a talk probably about the divide and conquer between men and women, although don't quote me on that yet. I'm still developing a bunch of stuff for that. So
awesome. Yeah, there's a big card there. There's a lot of people.
That's one of the conferences I want to go to this year. So
there's so many.
Yeah. I'll also be I'll be giving another a conference through Portal to Ascension. So if you just go to Portal to Ascension or Google that, I think it's portaltoascension.org, but just Google Portal to Ascension if you don't, or search engine, I should say. Then I'll be giving another webinar. I just gave a webinar about free energy,
which was amazing.
Yeah, you saw that. Awesome.
I watched the whole thing. It was really, really good. Yeah.
Oh, great, awesome. Yeah. So this one I'm going to be giving, it's going to be a much more in-depth presentation of a talk I gave at Contact in the Desert last year called Blueprint for a Better World Through Understanding ET Contact and Culture. So that is going to be on the 18th of May. I'll be in LA for Disclosure Fest, which is going to be, I believe, the 22nd or the 3rd. It's a Saturday in June. And it looks like I will also be speaking at another conference this August. We haven't finished hammering out the dates and location yet, so I'll announce that soon. So yeah, that's what's going on in my world.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to all of them. I wish I could go to every conference. It's so amazing, but it's not really feasible for everybody.
Well, you're going to the Hawaii one, so
yeah, I'm excited.
Going to one of the best ones.
Oh, nice. Yeah, good for you, man. That sounds great.
Yeah, it'll be great. Anyway, thanks for coming on. It's been awesome. Looking forward to seeing what you're gonna be coming up with in the future. And any last things you want to leave us with before we go?
I would say that, well, yeah, there's a lot of projects I'm working on right now that I haven't necessarily talked about, but there's a lot of big things coming as far as what I'm going to be offering. So keep an eye on that. You can follow my work at stillnessinthestorm.com. For now, I will be launching my solo project here, God willing, in this year at some point. So you'll be a little bit more condensed as far as, if you just want to see me and my work and that kind of thing, it'll be a little easier to find me. But if you go to stillnessinthestorm.com, there's a tab that says Start Here. And I've listed like all the choice articles that either I've written or that I think are really important that are hosted on Stillness. So if you want to kind of like crash course on everything related to awakening, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. And I would say, you know, as far as words of encouragement, you know, we're living in probably one of the most amazing times in human history. We are on the spiritual battlefield. And I don't mean to say that in a dark sense, but what I mean is that from a spiritual perspective, growth happens because we, through our beingness, strive to become more than we were. And right now, at a collective consciousness level, humanity's kind of been stuck in this place of being in the dark ages and being enslaved for most of human history, at the very least the past 7,000 to 8,000 years. So right now we're living in the times of the apocalypse. We have the mysteries of the ages at our fingertips through the internet. So take your time, do that studying, get to know yourself, be kind with yourself, love yourself, be compassionate with others, and really seek the truth. And we are going to make it through this together as one people.
Yes, that
Beautiful.
was beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes. And just a reminder, anybody who's listening, March 21st, National Happy Positive Day. Something that we're friend and I are trying to promote. Defy to the Cabal Day, just trying to get everybody.
Oh yeah. Sue, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll be blasting that on Facebook if I'm allowed to get back on it. Anyway, all right. It was great having you. Aaron, anything you want to add before we sign off here?
No, man. Just thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing. It's been a blessing having you on. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining us, man.
My pleasure. Glad to be here. We're going to make it through, guys.
Yes, we are.
All right. Later, guys.
All right. Later, guys.
Peace out.